A top story this morning, several planes, including some belonging to SAA and Comair, have been grounded. The Civil Aviation Authority found irregularities at maintenance and technical service provider SAA Technical. Let's get some perspective to the story. Joining us is SAA Flyer magazine editor Guy Leitch. Good morning to you, Guy. What do we make of this? What's happened here?
Well, I think that this is a follow-on from that extremely disquieting incident report we had from the Civil Aviation Authority about what was called a mango nosedive, where they were uncertain of what we would call the provenance or the history of some of the parts on the aircraft. And this then was tied in with a story in the Sunday Times about corruption in the parts supply chain at SAA Technical. So it certainly seems now that where there was smoke, there was indeed some fire. It also needs to be said, though, that it's extraordinary that the Civil Aviation Authority has resorted to grounding the airlines. I believe that they're the Boeing 737s of Comair, and of SAA. One would have thought they could have solved these problems before actually having to ground the airlines.
But isn't it better to ground them, try and ascertain what the problem is before something disastrous happens? I mean, clearly they are really worried.
Of course, and no doubt they are fully justified in that because, after all, safety is ultimately a non-negotiable. However, this has been an ongoing process. There are regular audits conducted on the parts on a regular basis by not just the Civil Aviation Authority, but by IATA, which approves these airlines, by British Airways itself in Comair's case, and so on. So my belief is that these problems should have been identified a little earlier and preventative action put in place rather than the somewhat heavy-handed grounding. But at least as passengers, we do have the comfort of knowing that the Civil Aviation Authority is acting without fear or favour against both private-owned airlines and, in this case, SAA Technical or SAA as well.
Okay, clearly they suspect that something is wrong. What should they be looking for? What should we be expecting to hear from them now?
As far as I can determine at this stage, the problem seems to be related to dodgy parts. And this is a problem that is pervasive across the airline industry. It needs extremely strong management to stop pirate parts or used parts getting back into aircraft. And it's all about putting controls and systems in place to make sure this doesn't happen. A properly run technical department or airline doesn't have these problems because it has the systems in place. Obviously, the Civil Aviation has found deficiencies in these systems, and they need to absolutely make sure that these systems are put back in place. And indeed, inventory is conducted of all the parts that have been put on aircraft in the last, since the problems were identified, certainly over the last 6 months.
Well, guys, probably not going to change. I mean, when you realize that avionics electronics of SAAT are not properly licensed, so therefore the work that they do is illegal.
It's suspect, yeah. Well, this is exactly it. It's a huge problem, and that's why my belief at this stage is that it should have been caught earlier before the aircraft were actually grounded. But nonetheless, they have acted proactively, and for that we as the travelling public need to be grateful that the CAA is prepared to ground an airline. But obviously the disruption, I believe, I'm hearing stories of passengers being unloaded from Mango aircraft sitting in Cape Town at the moment. The disruption is enormous, and the reputational damage to these airlines, through no fault of their own, simply through entrusting their maintenance to a previously very well-respected organisation in SAA Technical, is obviously huge. It also calls into question the quality of the British Airways, or whether British Airways will continue to have this very valuable franchise arrangement with Comair.
Yeah, I mean, clearly something that we can ill afford to lose. Guy, the people who are lucky enough to get on a plane today, should they be confident that everything has been done that needs to be done in order to make sure that the plane can fly safely?
I think so. I think that the evidence that the Civil Aviation Authority has come down hard, very hard indeed. Grounding is the ultimate indictment of an airline systems. Would suggest that they have got on, or they are prepared to actually not compromise at all. And obviously it helps that if you can fly other aircraft, particularly, it's a pity that it's the Boeing 737s again. Unfortunately, it's not the MAX because that's still grounded. But SAA is putting on other aircraft. It's wide bodies. It's got a fleet of Airbus as well. So those are all good signs for those flying obviously SAA. For Comair Kalula, it's obviously a lot more serious.
I'm asking you to speculate here, but what sort of time frame are we looking at? How long would it take to check these parts?
Well, I'm afraid I have no idea as to the scale of the problem at this stage. When I asked the CAA directly after the Mango grounding, they were actually very unforthcoming, which should have rung warning bells in my mind, other than giving assurances from SAA Technical. This could take days or even weeks, and I dare not even think of months, but to do the necessary inventory and check of parts, both installed on aircraft and still in stock, could be an extremely lengthy process.
Leitch, thank you very much.